All right, with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. This is the public information meeting for the Ogdensburg-Prescott International Bridge U.S. Approach Truss Spans, paving rehabilitation, pin 7754.28, D041413, and also the Ogdensburg-Prescott International Bridge U.S. Approach paving rehabilitation under pin 7754.29. Just a couple housekeeping items as we get started tonight with this virtual public information meeting. The presentation is being recorded. Link to the recording can be accessed from the meeting link. I believe all the attendees will also get a link emailed to them this sometime later this evening, but if not, feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in the recording. We can provide it. All participants are automatically muted, and tonight's participation will be through the Q&A box at the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Feel free to ask a question or make a comment at any time during the presentation by opening the chat box. Clicking on Ask a Question at the bottom of your screen, enter your name, or you can ask it anonymously, and we will try to address all comments and questions at the end of the presentation, or we'll at least let you know if we have to get back to you if it's something beyond the time we have this evening. So that's just a little housekeeping for these virtual public information meetings. So here's the agenda for tonight. We're going to talk first about the project team. We'll introduce everybody here momentarily. We'll also talk about project overviews and goals, our current schedule and next steps, and then we'll finally open it up for Q&A at the end. So as you can see here, the project team the members that are on here this evening are from the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority. So I'll open if they want to introduce themselves at this point.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for putting this together, and we appreciate all the assistance with doing the public meeting to inform the public. Again, thank you.
So that's Steve Lawrence, the Executive Director. Steve, is anybody else there with you this evening?
No, I don't know what happened to James, but I'm probably the sole representative right now. So should you have any questions, I'm here to help.
From New York State DOT Region 7.
Hi, this is Barbara Cadwell. I am the Regional Local Project Liaison for the New York State DOT. I'm not sure if Chris was going to attend or not.
Okay. So Barb is working with Chris Reff, who's the Regional Planning and Program Manager. They're our two main contacts with Region 7. And, you know, they respond up to FHWA as far as for funding and authorizations as we go through the project process here. From Greenman and Peterson, I'm Daniel Thomas. I'm the Senior Bridge Engineer and Project Manager. This is going to be my third go around as Project Manager for OBPA on a project. Also with us this evening, we have, I'll let the others jump in here now.
Hello, my name's Greg Keene. I'm the highway engineer on this project and handling the roadway rehab portion of this project.
My name is Chris Corn. Oh, go ahead, Joe. I'll take it then. My name is Chris Cornwell, GPI. I lead the civil highway group here out of the Albany office. Joe?
My name is Joe Adamczak. I'm the Director of Bridge Engineering, leading the Bridge Department here with Dan.
And so Joe will actually be monitoring the Q&A box this evening as I go through the presentation. So he'll be moderating that as we get to the end this evening. So he'll be watching for your questions as they come in. So a little bit about the Ogdensburg-Prescott International Bridge. It's a 1.5 mile, 2-lane suspension bridge spanning over the St. Lawrence River. It connects Ogdensburg, New York and Johnstown, Ontario. Carries 800,000 vehicles annually. Many of the vehicles going across this bridge are seeking either the Ontario 401 or the Ontario 416, which would take you up to Ottawa. So it's a link to Ottawa, Montreal, and if you're going south towards Toronto. On the New York side, it's New York 37 that connects into, which will take you to Messina, or down to eventually to Watertown and to Interstate 81 and the rest of the United States at that point. It was built from 1957 to 1960, and it's had two major rehabs, which were done in 2010, 2011, and 2020, 2021 thus far. So a little more overview on the bridge. Overall length is 7,383 feet. There's 2,179 feet of deck girder spans, and there's 17 of those in total. There's 3,054 feet of deck truss spans, over 12 spans. And the suspension main span is 1,150 feet in the center span with two 500-foot back spans. The towers that you would drive through when you're going across the bridge are 248 feet tall, and the vertical clearance over the shipping channel is 125 feet. So a little bit about the previous projects, because it kind of ties into how we got to where we are today. So the rehab number one was done in 2010, 2011. This involved the suspension spans receiving new galvanized deck and steel stringers. We upgraded the railing and electrical across the entire bridge. And at that time, we lowered the speed limit from 35 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. But that was only done on the bridge. So the land approaches retained their 35 miles per hour that they've had since 1960. For rehab number two in 2020, 2021, we did the span 1 through 8 plate girder and floor beam repairs. We also repainted the plate girders and cross framing. And spans 9 to 14 received new galvanized deck and steel floor beams. And those floor beams were installed onto the existing steel truss. So those two previous projects paved the way for rehab number 3, which is the 2025-2026 project that we're going to talk about now. So for the bridge part of this project, it's going to be truss span painting rehab. So we're going to be looking at repainting the U.S. deck truss that spans 9 to 14. The steel trusses and cross framing will begin repainting at span 9. And we currently have funding to cover spans 9 through 11. And the hopes are that we'll be able to find additional funding to continue the work on spans 12 to 14 while we have the same contractor involved. There is some efficiencies when we can do more spans as one project, obviously, from a mobilization and materials standpoint, especially with the protection that you'll see on subsequent slides here. So as a lot of this is kind of continuing the paint rehab that we did on spans 1 through 8, I wanted to kind of highlight how we got the painting redone on those spans, because we actually have actual photos from the 2020-2021 project. So for that project, it started out with installing traffic signals to create a single lane alternating traffic. We really never had major issues with huge traffic tie-ups during that project. Kept traffic flowing pretty good. So we're going to use the same approach here. Then they installed roadway containment, which is the black tarps you see on top of the steel open grid deck. Part of the reason why we have to do that is we're going to draw a vacuum in order to contain the grit that's being used to take the paint off. And so we don't want the grit coming up into the vehicle traffic above. At that point, then they started installing the work platform, which you can see on the photo on the right. And you can see some of the tie-ups going across the plate girder members. Take note of the rust that was showing on the plate girders at that time. The coating system was the original coatings from 1957 to 1960. And after 60 years, that paint has long outlived its expected life cycle. Typically, structural steel paint is usually thought to last anywhere from 20 to 30 years at most, and then you'll start seeing it deteriorate. And in this case, you could see it was starting to come off in larger areas at this point. Over on this slide here, you can see that here's more of the decks. This was a safe span system, but there's some various systems out there that are very similar. steel wire rope attaching it to the steel above, the floor beams above. On the right, you can see we have the sidewall containment tarps now in place. That allows us to draw the vacuum and start doing the blast cleaning. In the photo on the right, you can see some of the grit from blast cleaning on the actual safe span that hasn't been vacuumed up yet. You'll notice that the steel has been primed at this point. That nice kind of silvery gray is the color of a lot of the primers. We typically prime and then go back through and determine steel repairs. That way we don't get flash rust occurring on our newly cleaned surfaces. So now once they've determined the steel repairs and they've taken measurements and sent those off to fabrication, they will go ahead and start doing the intermediate and finish coat. So the intermediate coat, which I don't have a picture of here, is usually a very contrasting dark color. And then our finish coat in this case was sage green, which you see on a lot of bridges throughout New York State. Some regions will also throw in some blues and reds, but they're, usually the finish coat is something that's very striking and easy to see both in daytime and at night. At this point, they would remove the sidewalk containment tarps and install the steel repairs where required. You'll notice on the photo on the right, we did a fair number of floor beam repairs where they did some fish plating, where they take angles and plates and they replace the section that was lost in the web and flange. There was also in some places where we did steel repairs such as these connection plates or gusset plates. Again, everything is, fabricated to fit, matching the existing holes. Plates are made in the shop, they're galvanized, and then brought out to the site. So everything that's new that we're putting on the bridge is galvanized at this point. And that's to give us a much superior lifespan than structural steel painting by itself. So, much of what you're going to see in the truss spans, obviously we're showing pictures of the plate girder here, but it's going to be kind of the same idea, only substitute the plate girders for the actual truss members, but it's the same concept. The only thing we won't have to do this time around is the floor beams because they're all brand new galvanized steel from 4 years ago. So that talks about the painting part of this project. So at the same time as we're developing that, we're going to be developing the paving rehabilitation. Project limits on this are approximately 3,900 feet from the edge of Proctor Avenue intersection northward to the U.S. abutment. As you can see in the photos on the right side of the screen right now, that is the U.S. abutment. You can see that the original steel grid deck is still in existence on spans 1 through 8. It's got that nice kind of rusty brown color to it. If you've driven across this bridge, you'll know that when you get up to the deck truss spans, it's a nice shiny gray all the way across the suspension span. So you can tell when you're driving across this which spans we've replaced the deck so far. The eventual goal in subsequent projects is to eventually replace all of the deck with the galvanized deck that you see in the middle spans at this point. But we are probably several projects away from reaching that. But for the paving rehab, what we're going to be doing in repaving everything from the U.S. abutment to Proctor Ave, we're going to be going all the way down through all the lanes in and out of U.S. Customs. We'll also be hitting pretty much everything except for the concrete slabs at Customs and the toll plaza. We'll be doing full depth and partial depth rehabilitations depending on the existing condition. We'll be using kind of a similar traffic control scheme of single lane closures so that we can keep traffic moving through. When we get down to Customs, we'll be taking single lanes, and we may be shifting traffic into different bays of the Customs facility as needed to facilitate construction, and then moving them back as we go across. But at no time will there be full roadway closures. So I know that, for those of you that live up there and experienced the full closures when we did the deck rehab part of the last project, because we're not doing anything that's touching the deck in this case, we won't need to do those full roadway closures this time around. This is another overview shot of the limits of the project. So you can see that, everywhere in red is what we're going to be repaving. So all of the major travel lanes except for where they hit the concrete slabs at the toll plaza and at the U.S. Customs. And we will be coming down. Basically, we'll be dressing up the Proctor Ave intersection just to make sure that everything transitions smoothly at the intersection. The other thing we want to point out to everybody is there will be a posted speed limit change. So we're going to be extending the 25-mile-per-hour and 40-kilometer-per-hour signs down all the way from the U.S. abutment to Proctor Avenue. We're doing this for a couple reasons, but it's mostly in the interest of safety to the traveling public, but also to the OBPA and U.S. Customs staff. Once you pass through, past the Customs building, you're in kind of what they call a protected zone between the U.S. Customs and the Canadian Customs building. And the idea of this is that now we'll have a consistent posted speed throughout all of OBPA's maintained roadway. And it turns out that if you do the math, that it only adds a half a minute of travel time to go the 3/4 of a mile at 25 versus the 35 that's there today. So the plan is that these signs will be included in the project and they'll be installed at the time during paving operations. So now tentative schedule and preliminary costs. So, after tonight's meeting, we're going to be looking to move towards design approval in late March 2025. That'll be going on simultaneously for the paving and painting projects, with the idea of seeking construction approval by sometime in July of this year. Now, we're going to intentionally advertise and bid the paving project a month earlier than the paint. That's going to allow us to capture any of the money that's not used for the paving back over to the painting project, with the idea that the paving will hopefully be able to be done between September and November this year. And we have an anticipated cost currently for the total project for paving of $3,171,000. On the painting side, we will then look to advertise that and bid it in September of 2025. With the idea that the painting will occur in the construction season of 2026. So, basically it'll mostly fall within that April to September range, trying to stay away from the cold nights as much as possible. So we want to be in and out before we get into a situation where paint could freeze during the overnight. The current estimate total cost is just over $10 million for spans 9 through 11. And for each additional span, we're looking to find about $3.2 million. So if we can come up with about another $10 million, we'd be able to do all 6 spans at once under one contract. Time will tell if the state or the feds are able to identify additional funding sources to help out with that. So with that, we'll open this up now to questions. Written comments can be submitted in various formats. There will be a link on the OBPA's website. You can obviously send it to OBPA that way. Or you can also email me, Daniel Thomas, at dthomas@gpinet.com. And obviously, we'll also take any questions that people have this evening. And I don't know if, Joe, if you've seen any so far that you want us to talk about.
There has not been any.
Okay. We'll give people a couple minutes here, see if they type anything in. While we're waiting for any questions or comments that come in here, if anybody else also wants to touch on anything I may not have covered, feel free to jump in.
Don't think we're gonna get any questions, Dan.
Looks pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously, if anybody that's on here this evening thinks of anything here in the next few days, feel free to reach out to us. Like I said, the idea here is that we're going to be shooting to submit for design approval towards the end of March. We're currently addressing the state DOT's comments right now from the draft and updating the plans accordingly. And we're, like I said, people have questions or concerns. That's why we do these meetings. That's when we'll still be available to hear you out as time goes on here. With that, I'd like to thank everybody for participating this evening, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening.